Hey, welcome back to Easy Learning 77, your complete Algebra 1, Semester 1, standards-based course. This is just one lesson out of many. If you haven't done so already, please visit tinyurl.com/easylearning77 so you can see our entire course and everything that we offer. Thanks, and let's get started. In this lesson, we're going to study how to substitute a constant into a mathematical expression. So we can be given a problem like this. Substitute x equals 5 into the expression 2x minus 3. So let's just review a little bit from the last lesson. 5, let's get that 5. Is that a constant or is that a variable? Right, it's a constant. 5 is a constant. It's a value that never changes. The x now, what is that going to be? Is it a term? Is it mathematical expression? X is a variable. So remember, with variables, the values can change. We represent variables with a letter like X or T, and those values can change. So over here, we look at that 2x minus 3. And if you remember, that is an example of an algebraic expression. And just so you remember, 2x, what 2x really means is that's 2 times x, which I can write like this. 2 dot x means 2 times x. Okay, so here's our problem. Substitute x equals 5 into the expression 2x minus 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that constant 5 given to us, and then the second thing we'll do is we're going to look at our algebraic expression and we'll substitute it into the variable x in the expression. So here's what I mean. Here's my constant 5, and here is my algebraic expression 2x minus 3. I'm going to take that 5 and I'm going to substitute it into x. And when I do that, I get this, 2 times 5 minus 3. So remember, 2x really means 2 times x, and so when I put that 5 into x, I get 2 times 5, and I represent multiplication with that dot. So that's 2 times 5 minus 3 equals. So I've got multiplication, I've got subtraction. If you remember, we should do multiplication first. So we're going to take 2 times 5 first. So let me ask you, what is 2 times 5? Correct, it's 10. So here I get 10 minus 3. So now I'm going to subtract 10 minus 3, and 10 minus 3 is how much? Correct, 7. So 7 is our final answer. Okay, so when we get in the result in algebra, we should always check our work with a calculator. So I'm using the TI Inspire, and this is what the screen is going to look like. I'm going to put in 2 times 5. There's that little dot we were talking about that means multiplication. 2 times 5 minus 3. So I just type that in, and when I hit enter, 7 comes up, which is the same answer that we got just a minute ago. So all I have to do is type in the operations, and the calculator gives me the answer of 7. But please make sure you know how to do this both by hand and by calculator, because there may be times your teacher says you cannot use a calculator. So make sure you know how to do this both by hand and by calculator. Let's look at this second example. Here's the problem. What is the value of negative 7x plus 10 when x is 14? So again, I've got a constant, which is 14 in this case. I've got an algebraic expression, negative 7x plus 10. And I've got a variable x. So just like in the last problem, first step is we're going to take the constant given to us, which is 14. And the second step is we're going to substitute that 14 into the variable x in our algebraic expression. So here's my constant, 14. And here is my algebraic expression, negative 7x plus 10. So I take that 14 and I put it into where x is at. Now remember, negative 7x means negative 7 times 14. So when I do the substitution, this is what it looks like. Negative 7 times 14 plus 10 equals. Now, if you remember from the last problem, we said we would do multiplication first. So I'll take negative 7 times 14. So use your calculator or do it in your head, whichever works best for you. What's negative 7 times 14? I'll give you a second to do that. Correct, it's negative 98, and so I get negative 98 plus 10. So now I've got negative 98 plus 10, and so I do this on my calculator or I do it by hand, but what is negative 98 plus 10 equal to? Right, it's negative 88, so negative 88 is our final answer. Now, remember, if you get a little bit behind, you're a little bit confused about something, you can always rewind these videos. And you can pause them if you want to stop and look at some information. So you can do that. If you're on Saturday at home and you want to look at these again, you can do them from home. Anytime you need them, they're up 24/7. Just go to tinyurl.com/easylearning77. Okay, so again, we're going to check our work with a calculator, and I am using the TI Inspire. So I put in my algebraic expression, negative 7 times 14 plus 10. And when I hit enter, I get the result of negative 88, which matches what we got by hand. And so we probably did this correctly. Make sure you know how to do these problems both by hand and by calculator. And as our little friend here is saying, success is sweet. Okay, here's our third example. And here's what this problem says. Given f of x equals 6 times the quantity 1 minus x, what is the value of f of negative 8? So at first, you might be saying, what the heck is that? But it's really a very simple problem when we kind of think about what we already know and what we're given. By the way, this question was given on the STAR test in the spring of 2016 in Texas. So actually, this is actually a substitution problem, just like the last two problems we did. If you look over here, we've got a mathematical expression, 6 times 1 minus x. So we're given a mathematical expression, 6 times the quantity 1 minus x. And what else are we given? We're given a value for x. It's just that it's hidden a little bit. So when I look over here, I've got this funny looking thing here that says f of negative 8. So it turns out that f of negative 8 actually means that x is equal to negative 8. So just like the last two problems, I'm given a constant value, in this case negative 8, and I'm also given the mathematical expression, 6 times 1 minus x. So I can think of this problem, another way of saying this problem is substitute x equals negative 8 into 6 times 1 minus x, or we could also say, what is the value of 6 times 1 minus x when x is negative 8? No matter how we say it, all we're doing is taking that negative 8 and substituting it in for x. So now that we know how to attack this problem, let's go ahead and do it. So first off, we need to realize that we're given the mathematical expression of 6 times the quantity 1 minus x. And also we need to remember that f of negative 8 really just means that x is equal to negative 8. So I'll take my constant, which is negative 8, and I'll substitute it into the variable x in our algebraic expression. So here's my negative 8. Here's my 6 times 1 minus x, my algebraic expression, and I substitute my constant negative 8 into my variable x. And so when I do that, that 6 remains the same, the 1 remains the same, the minus is still there, but instead of x now I've got negative 8. So what I'm going to do is, if you remember from your previous math course, we should do what's inside parentheses first. So I look inside this parentheses, and I've got that negative 8. So the first thing we have to do is ask ourselves, what is negative 8? Well, the negative times the negative is a positive. So it's just positive 8. So here's what we get. I've got 6 times 1, and that negative 8 simplified down to plus 8. So again, I'm going to look to see what's inside parentheses first. Inside parentheses, I have 1 plus 8. So what's 1 plus 8? Yeah, it's just 9. So I get 6 times 9. And so I'll multiply 6 times 9 now. So do that in your head or do it in your calculator. What is 6 times 9? Right, it's just 54. So this is our final answer. And look, we have a happy face. Okay, so now we're going to check our work like we always do. I'm using the TI Inspire. So I put my mathematical expression into the calculator. I get 6 times parentheses 1 minus a negative 8, close parentheses, and when I hit enter, it gives me an answer of 54, which matches what we got by hand. So we did this correctly. I hope you're really proud of yourself because that was kind of a hard problem. That was directly out of the STAR test, and so you are one step closer if you're living in Texas to passing the STAR exam. Again, make sure you know how to do this by hand and by calculator. Okay, so as you can see, here's what your typical math teacher looks like, and this is my face when I get it all correct. So over here I have my typical Algebra 1 freshman student, and he's saying, yo dog, we got this. So remember, you can always pause the video if necessary. And you can also rewind it if necessary if you want to go look back and look at examples or clarifying anything. If you have any questions, ask your shoulder partner, and if you still have more questions, ask your teacher. Okay, so as you can see, we have our little friend here, and our little friend says it's time for us to practice what we've learned in this lesson. So your teacher may ask you to work with your shoulder partner, or they may ask you to work individually. Either way, each student must turn in their own work. Show all your work for credit, please, and don't forget to put your name on your paper. So here's 10 problems for you to work on. Make sure that you copy these problems on a paper, and you're going to turn this paper into your teacher. So pause the video now so you can copy the problems. When you're done copying them, you can just hit play and do the problems. Good luck to you, and I'm sure you'll do great. So here we've reached the end of our lesson. I want to thank you for all your hard work. And so here we have our grumpy Algebra 1 teacher here. And just want to remind you, don't be grumpy. Just visit tinyurl.com/easylearning77 and Algebra 1 will be really easy for you. Thanks and have a great day.